The story begins on a brutally cold winter day. Everywhere you looked, there was nothing but snow. The resort was nestled among towering, snow-capped peaks and was teeming with tourists. Everyone had come to spend their holidays and soak in the beauty of the valleys. In this crowd of thousands, there were three close friends, Dan, Lynch, and Parker. Dan and Lynch were childhood best friends, and Parker was Dan's girlfriend. Their plan was simple: go to the highest peak of the mountain and ski all the way down. To reach the top, they used a chairlift. They sat in the chairlift, laughing and joking as they ascended. Suddenly, the lift stopped with a violent jerk. Dangling midair, their faces turned pale with fear. The other passengers were also panicked. Fortunately, it was just a minor technical glitch. After a few minutes, the lift started moving again, and they reached the summit safely. Once at the top, they forgot all their tension and spent hours skiing. They didn't even realize when evening turned into night. After dark, the three came down and ate dinner at a resort restaurant. Even with full stomachs, they weren't satisfied. Dan suggested one last run. They rushed back to the ticket counter and reached the lift. However, the lift operator stopped them. He said firmly, "Sorry guys, I just got word that the weather is turning bad. There's a chance of a storm. We are closing the lift for the day. Come back tomorrow." But Dan, Parker, and Lynch weren't ready to give up. They pleaded with the man. Dan said, "Brother, please, just one last time. We promise we'll come straight down as soon as we reach the top. We don't have time, we have to leave tomorrow." Seeing their persistence, the man's heart melted, and he let them through. The three cheered and boarded the chairlift. While they were ascending, the operator was finishing his shift. His colleague, Rifkin, arrived with bad news. "The boss canceled the vacation you requested for next week. You need to go to the office and talk to him right now." Upset and anxious to speak with the boss, the operator hurriedly handed over the responsibility to Rifkin. He told him, "Listen, Rifkin, 3 people just went up. As soon as those 3 come down, shut down the lift." Then he left. Rifkin was now alone. A short while later, he saw 3 skiers coming down the mountain. They were a different group, but Rifkin mistakenly thought they were the 3 his colleague mentioned. In this confusion, he shut off the lift, turned off all the lights, and went home. He was completely unaware that Dan, Parker, and Lynch were still suspended in the air. Up on the mountain, the lift suddenly stopped with a jerk. The 3 were shocked. Initially, they thought it was another minor glitch like before. They joked around to pass the time, but as minutes turned into hours, their fear grew. It was freezing, and the darkness was deepening. After about 20-25 minutes, the lift hadn't moved an inch. Their laughter vanished. They began shouting toward the bottom, "Hello, is anyone there? Start the lift, we're stuck up here." They had no idea there was no one left to hear them. Then the massive resort lights began turning off one by one. The entire mountain was plunged into darkness. They trembled with terror. They realized the lift wasn't broken. It had been shut down because the staff thought everyone was gone. They were abandoned. Parker broke down in tears. Dan tried to calm her, saying, "Parker, don't cry. Nothing will happen. I'm here." They screamed for help together, but their voices were lost in the silence. Dan remained hopeful, saying, "They can't just leave us like this. Someone will surely do a patrol round. We just have to wait." But then Parker remembered something terrifying. In a trembling voice, she said, "Dan, today is Sunday. This resort is only open on weekends, Friday to Sunday. No one will come here for the next 4 days." This meant if they weren't rescued tonight, they would be hanging there until Friday. Lynch and Dan were horrified. Surviving 5 days at that height in such extreme cold without food or water was impossible. To lighten the mood, Lynch said, "We're worrying for nothing. The lights will come back on soon, they'll realize their mistake, and we'll be downstairs eating a hot meal." Just as he said that, the weather turned. Dark clouds gathered and a fierce snowstorm began. They shivered violently, tiny shards of ice stung their faces. It was so cold their lips turned blue. They tucked their faces into their jackets, enduring the storm for hours. When the storm finally calmed, Lynch spotted a light. A snowcat was driving below. Overjoyed, they screamed and waved, certain they were being rescued. However, the truck stopped some distance away. The driver was looking for a colleague, but he received a radio message saying the colleague had already returned to base. Because of the worsening weather, the driver was ordered back. As the truck turned around, the trio grew desperate. They shouted, but the engine and the wind drowned them out. They were too high for the driver to look up. In a final attempt to get his attention, they threw their skis and goggles in front of the truck. But the driver was looking behind him while revering. He didn't see the items and drove away. The red taillights faded into the darkness. Their hope shattered. The bone-chilling cold was becoming unbearable. Parker's skin began to burn from frostbite. To distract herself, she tried to light a cigarette, but her hands were shaking so much that she dropped one of her gloves. It fell to the ground, leaving her bare hand exposed to the freezing air. Dan noticed a frostbite wound on Parker's cheek. Seeing her condition, Dan reached a breaking point. He was convinced they wouldn't survive a week. He made a drastic decision. "I can't wait anymore. I'm going to jump, go to the resort, and bring help." He hoped the snow below was thick enough to cushion his fall. Lynch and Parker tried to stop him. "Dan, don't be crazy, it's too high," Lynch pleaded. But Dan insisted, "I'd rather die trying than sit here and freeze." He threw his snowboard down and jumped. As he hit the ground, a sickening crack echoed through the air, the sound of bones shattering. Where Dan landed, the snow was thin, covering solid rock. Both his legs were broken, with bones protruding through the skin. His screams pierced the silence. Parker and Lynch watched helplessly, paralyzed with horror. Dan couldn't move, and his blood began to stain the white snow. Parker threw her scarf down to him so he could try to stop the bleeding, but the wind blew it away. Then Lynch heard a sound that made their blood run cold, the howling of wild wolves. Hearing them, Dan began to scream in terror, forgetting his physical pain. Lynch decided he had to reach the support pole 2 chairs behind them. He planned to climb across the cable to the pole and go down the ladder. But the cable was sharp as a knife from the lift's friction. Lynch began his attempt. He and Parker cleared the ice off the chair so he could reach the cable. As they did, the ice fell on Dan's face below. Dan covered his face, and when he moved his hands, a man-eating wolf was standing right in front of him. Parker threw her snowboard at the wolf. It hit its mark, and the wolf ran away temporarily. Lynch grabbed the sharp cable with his bare hands. He began moving hand over hand, the metal slicing into his palms. He hadn't gone far when he looked down and froze. He scrambled back to the chair and told Parker, "Parker, look at me. Don't look down. Do not look down." But Parker looked. A pack of wolves had surrounded Dan. They fell upon him, tearing him apart. The helpless screams of their friend eventually went silent as Dan was killed. Traumatized and in shock, Lynch and Parker spent the rest of the night in silence. The next morning, Parker's hand had frozen to the metal safety rail. When she pulled it away, the skin tore off her palm. Lynch tried to encourage her, saying, "It's Monday. Maybe our friends will come looking for us." But Parker knew no one knew where they were. Lynch knew the only way out was that cable. He waited until noon, but no one came. Parker was so hopeless she considered jumping to end it, but Lynch scolded her. "Dan gave his life so we could live. If you die, his sacrifice is for nothing." Lynch climbed onto the cable again. As he moved, a part of their chair broke, leaving it tilting precariously. Lynch managed to reach the pole despite his shredded, bleeding hands. He climbed down the ladder and reached the ground, only to be confronted by the wolves. He fought one off with a ski pole, grabbed his snowboard, and shouted to Parker, "I'm going for help," as he slid down the mountain with the wolves in hot pursuit. Parker was now completely alone. Hours passed, then another day. Neither Lynch nor help arrived. Fearing the worst, she decided to jump. As she prepared, the final bolt of the chair snapped. The chair plummeted but got caught in a lower cable. Parker was dangling just above the ground. Before that cable could snap, she jumped. She survived the fall, but the chair fell on her leg, injuring it. Despite the pain, she began crawling down the mountain. She eventually found a trail of blood and saw the wolves eating Lynch's remains. One wolf looked at her, but since it was full, it let her pass. Parker finally reached the road. A passing driver spotted her, stopped the car, and rushed to her aid. He carried her into the car, saying, "Stay strong, you're safe now." As she sat in the car, Parker wasn't thinking about her pain. She was overwhelmed by the loss of Dan and Lynch, the friends whose sacrifices had kept her alive. She closed her eyes, lost in their memory as the story ends.